Greetings, Starks, Lannisters, and journalists, to the 144th episode of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 3rd of February 2016, and introducing an Unearthly Podcast presents the Centaurans with The Time Warrior, written by Robert Holmes and starring John Pertwee, and introducing Elisabeth Sladen, also introducing a running joke that hopefully will die when the Chibnall era starts. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell.
Happy birthday to me.
Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Go, Team Venture!
Aaron Romeo Moon Burke. Mew. And Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
Zoom!
All right.
Hey, why are we cheering
those
for
random
Zoom?
things.
Is Zoom going to steal our speed? Because I don't have much as it is.
I
gotta make a living.
I hobbled to and from class. But no, I'm actually a little stoked because the Venture Brothers has actually started its next season on Cartoon Network, so on Adult Swim. So I watched the first episode and I'm looking forward to more. So let's get into our news.
Indeed.
We have a few birthdays. First of all, a happy birthday to Daphne Ashbrook, who is better known as Grace Holloway from the Doctor Who TV movie in '96, as well as a few audio dramas, if I recall.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Daphne turned 53 on Saturday, the 30th of January. A belated happy birthday or a posthumous happy birthday, I should say, to Elisabeth Sladen, who we will be talking about much today, who, of course, played Sarah Jane Smith from this episode until is it 75, I think?
At least.
75
for her first run?
For her main run.
I was going to say, because there was her main run, then there was a spin-off, then there was the anniversary special, and then there was Big Finish.
And then her return in 2006.
Was she in Canine and Company?
Yes, she was.
She was the star of it.
She was the star of it, too.
Well, Canine might have been the star of Canine and Company, but...
Her original run ended on 23rd October 1976.
Yep. So 73 to 76. And then, like we said, she returned in the very early 80s for Canine and Company, which never really made it as a series. And then again in 83 for the 20th anniversary special before going to Big Finish, recording some audio before returning in 2016 in school, or 2006.
I wish she would return in 2016.
It'd be nice.
She's not dead.
And then she proceeded to do the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was essentially Canine and Company, but better, from 2007, I think, till 2011 when she died. She would have turned 70 on Monday, and the world is still a smaller place without her in it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Also, happy birthday to Lisa Bowerman, best known as Bernie Summerfield, companion to the 7th and 8th Doctors, and a heroine in her own right due to Big Finish audio productions and books. She also tends to work as a director. Where did you get the phrase, the voice that launched 1,000 discs there, Bill?
I adapted it from the Trojan War person. Because there's well over 1,000 discs as a result of Big Finish, and without her, there would possibly be no Big Finish, or it would have been somebody else other than her. Who knows?
I don't know.
Alternate timelines.
I think it was just the mass society's need for new Doctor Who that made.
If not for their Bernice Summerfield adaptations, they would not have been able to convince BBC to let them do new Doctor Who.
Really? The Bernice Summerfield came first before.
Yeah, they asked BBC to do new Doctor Who. BBC said no because they were consolidating everything, getting rid of Virgin and all that. and then they came back with the New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield adaptations, and BBC was like, yeah, okay, we'll let you do it.
Huh. Okay.
And that was on the Sirens of Time behind the scenes.
Ah, I did not actually know that.
The more you know.
Well, she turned 54 on Monday the 1st, which is better than having your birthday on the 2nd, because you don't want to share it with people looking at groundhogs. Not to mention the possibility of living your birthday over and over and over again. But happy birthday, Lisa. And now...
It's your birthday. Happy birthday, Lisa.
A birthday whose age absolutely amazes me. A happy 46th birthday to Warwick Davis, a literary... I mean, he's one of the biggest, most recognized names in sci-fi. He started his career playing Wicket in Return of the Jedi, came back a few years later starring in his own show Willow, star of the Leprechaun series, known as Professor Flitwick and Griphook the Goblin in the Harry Potter films. He played Porridge in Nightmare in Silver, and it still surprises me to this day that he's only 46.
I think he was like 8 in Return of the Jedi, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He was very young.
He started off very young and already doing a great job.
I know, but it still surprises me because he has this massive, massive work behind him, and he did Willow not that long afterwards.
Yeah, he must have been like...
Who said Star Wars ruins your career?
Carrie Fisher, apparently, but...
Anyway...
Carrie Fisher was also doing a lot of drugs. Okay.
He turns 46, today on the 3rd. So a very happy birthday to Warwick Davis.
Very happy 46th, man.
Happy birthday.
Maybe he can come back next time Neil Gaiman writes an episode.
Pretty pleased with sugar on top.
Yeah, I mean... Okay, Willow was 1988. Return of the Jedi was 1983. So he was 13.
Yeah, so he was about 13, 14 at the time.
That's freaking amazing.
Oh, wait, actually, if it's 46 in 2016, that makes it pretty easier to do the math. So he was born in 70, 13 for Return of the Jedi, so older than I thought, but it probably spent a few years, 18 for Willow.
Damn.
He did a hell of a number on Willow, and that he was not even in his 20s
he was
yet.
probably more like 11 when they actually filmed Return of the Jedi. I don't know how long it was in production.
It would have been
At
over the
least
course
3
of 3 years, but it was probably 11 or 12 when they did that, because you can expect about 18 months of post work for a Star Wars film in that time.
Yeah. Man, now people get upset when there's an 18-month gap between episodes.
Yeah, well, times have changed, and nowadays, they're post and pre happen simultaneously. So.
Okay, I just found the best Warwick Davis picture ever. I'm going to zoom this up for the audience. I'm going to have to share this with the chat.
That would be nice.
Yeah, because some of us can't afford the bandwidth to be on the stream at the same time.
Oh, I see it. That's great.
The thing is, he's such a... I have to believe he's a fanboy in his own right. I mean, I know he was a huge Star Wars fan, but I think he's a fanboy in general.
To be in that many genre films, you have to be.
You have to, yeah. Literally the only...
Gingerbread Doctors to Pandorica to a Dalek Cake, the fun, family-oriented cookbook comes this August. In the fall, Who Graphica will be released in September. This is another reference book featuring visualizations and infographics about the universe of the show, and is described as being for new and long-term fans.
All of these reference books are making me wish that they would release a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Doctor Who Galaxy with actual narration and such.
Narration by Stephen Fry.
Yes.
Lastly, in October, BBC Books brings us a never-before-seen history of the human race in The Whoniverse, the untold history of the worlds of Doctor Who. The book will be filled with maps, charts, photographs, and full-color illustrations. TheBookseller.com tells us that in addition to these new releases, BBC Books is reissuing 7 long out-of-print Target story novelizations from Classic Who, one for each Doctor, in both physical and digital formats. This is continuing a line of reissues that began in 2012 and has received overwhelmingly positive responses, according to Albert de Petrillo, Senior Editorial Director at BBC Books. Doctor Who and the Zarbi by Bill Strutton, Doctor Who and the Web of Fear by Terrance Dicks, Doctor Who and the Dinosaur Invasion by Malcolm Hulke, Doctor Who and the Genesis of the Daleks by Terrance Dicks, Doctor Who, The Visitation by Eric Sayward, Doctor Who, Vengeance on Varys by Philip Martin, and Doctor Who, Battlefield by Mark Platt are due for publication on the 28th of April for the price of £6.99.
Some of them are very good stories. Some of them are better versions of failed attempts at good stories.
So these are basically re-releases of the original novelizations,
Yes.
like the old Target books,
Yep. They
the
are
old
they are the
artwork and
Target
everything, yep.
ones.
just with
And
probably
I believe most of them are intended to keep the original cover art, although for whatever reason a few are having new art commissioned.
I take it, of course, replacing the old Target logo with the BBC Books logo.
I don't
Probably.
see any logo on any of the covers as of yet.
That's probably on the spine, actually,
Most
Yeah.
likely.
because that's where that's where the Target was. And God, I can tell you, I collected these things obsessively as a kid. I must have had somewhere between 50 and 60 of these novelizations. They sometimes give you a little additional information because they're based off of novelizations from earlier versions of the script. So they have stuff
Right.
that got cut. And sometimes the author had to fill in information, but they're still wonderful, wonderful reads.
I think they're from at least from what I've gathered, they're especially beneficial when the story editor or the original writer of the script is the one that writes the novelization, because then they include things that they just couldn't fit into the television script, like
And
people's motivations and such.
they're usually the ones that get the first pass at it. And usually they have to get their permission, because that's one of the reasons that City of Death was never novelized until recently, was the fact that it needed Douglas Adams refused to write it for less than whatever he's commissioned to write one of his own mainline novels.
Yeah.
And he didn't give permission for anyone else to do it. So usually they're given first pass, and if they take a pass and they give their consent, somebody else, normally it was Terrance Dicks, would then proceed to write the novelization.
Oh, that probably depended on the era. I'm sure very early on it was mostly Whittaker, and then it was Dicks after that.
Well, mind you, the novelizations didn't start until like the Third Doctor, early Fourth Doctor era. I know some of the early pre-Target books actually took Third Doctor adventures and changed the novelization to make it Fourth Doctor because he was fresh. And those books were later re-released with the original Doctor in them. Like, I think I had a copy of the Dinosaur Invasion where it mentions the scarf. But those were not the Target books. That was the company that had it prior to that. I think that was Pinnacle. And when Target re-released them, they made sure that all the changes were made to be the correct Doctor in those novelizations.
Speaking of pre-Target books, Tim, want to take the next bit of that?
Yes. Also planned for release are hardcover re-releases of the first 3 Doctor Who novels published. Once again, Doctor Who and the Zarbi, Doctor Who and the Daleks by David Whittaker. Apparently they're not resurrecting the exciting adventure. And Doctor Who and the Crusaders by David Whittaker. These novels will see their hardcover re-release on the 3rd of November for £9.99.
I'm kind of curious what they're doing with the hardcovers, or if they're literally just taking the original cover and making it hard.
Also from Doctor Who news, Candy Jar Books and Phantom Films have partnered to adapt the first 4 adventures of the Lethbridge Stewart as audiobooks, read by a voice almost as iconic as Nicholas Courtney's himself, Terry Malloy, the voice of Davros.
Oh.
That's actually slightly brain breaky, considering Terry Malloy was not around during the Lethbridge Stewart era.
True.
But they can't exactly get Nicholas Courtney, can they?
No.
I'm kind of wondering if Malloy is going to do a Brigadier impression, but I tend to doubt it because his voice is pretty different.
Yeah. I don't know anybody that can do a Nicholas Courtney impression.
Yeah, and I know Nicholas Courtney can do a John Pertwee impression, but I don't know who can do the other way around. Or
well,
could, I should say, could do a John Pertwee.
I was going to say he can't do a Pertwee anymore.
No. But in his audio days.
The stories The Forgotten Son, The Schizoid Earth, Beast of Fang Rock, and Mutually Assured Domination will be released over the next half year, with releases in March, April, June, and July, by which point we should find it unsurprising if a similar announcement for the next group is made. The 5th book in the series, Sadie Miller's Moon Blink, is due to be published in April. Things to look forward to.
Mutually Assured Domination sounds like a very different type of book.
Yes, it does.
Picturing the doctor in black leather. I mean, not the the Brigadier in black leather, I mean.
Oh. Still, it's very hard to have mutually assured domination in that aspect.
Oh no, if they're both switches.
Yeah.
Okay,
your turn to switch into the suit.
Okay, Bill, just go.
Yeah, let's switch. BigFinish.com announces the first release of a new series of Doctor Who short trips. The story, which features the return of a classic Doctor Who villain, is narrated by Mark Strickson, written by novelist Jenny T. Colgan, who wrote the 10th Doctor novel we just discussed earlier, and set immediately following Turlough's introduction in Modern Undead, which might make it easy to assume the returning villain in question. Turlough has joined the TARDIS, the snake in the orchard, and is trying with limited success to gain the others' trust. But when they land in the Gardens of the Dead, the whole team, Nyssa, Tegan, and Turlough, will have to join forces and fight together to keep the Doctor safe, and discover what is behind the very last door in the TARDIS.
Can I be a little spoilery at this point? I know we're not doing the Black Guardian trilogy for about a season.
Mm-hmm.
But considering the fact that the early portions of the Black Guardian trilogy, he really only has one major line that he says at all times, which is screaming at Turlough to kill the Doctor.
You're saying the returning villain, you mean?
Yes. If you know anything about that era, you know who the villain is. It's
of course
obvious as hell.
Yeah, you just said the name of the trilogy, so I hope.
Yeah. It's not really a spoiler, considering it's also like 30 years old.
Yeah, the returning villain thing is Big Finish's own words, but as I saw like where it was set, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure we know who the returning villain is. They're going to have to work very hard to surprise us if it's going to be a different returning villain.
Unless, of course, they mean it's also going to be little words from the Black Guardian and a different main villain.
Right.
Because the Black Guardian and the Black Guardian trilogy is very passive. You don't actually see him until the very end of the trilogy. You just hear him in Turlough's mind. Because, he's made the deal with the devil. So the devil gets to talk to him directly. Occasionally, I think you might see him as a form of like something only Turlough could see, kind of like Al to Turlough's Sam Beckett at that point. But really, it's just him showing up and snarling at him and screaming at him to kill the Doctor. I mean, that's basically all he did until the final episode.
One thing that's a little interesting about this short trip is... again, if you know anything about the Black Guardian trilogy, you know this is the only gap between 2 episodes where this particular TARDIS team is possible. So this, in theory, could be a sort of link to any other audios that they've done or plan to do with that, and they could potentially leave an open ending as a result of that, just to give themselves more wiggle room.
To turn the Black Guardian trilogy into like a Black Guardian semi-season in a way,
Yeah.
where you have Nissa, Tegan, and Turlo.
Sort of like how Big Finish kind of put the essentially a season in between Time Flight and Arc of Infinity.
Mm-hmm. And they've widened gaps there all the time. I mean, they've thrown in whole companions.
True.
Because really, if you take a look at Perry had 2 episodes with the Fifth Doctor. She had Planet of Fire, which is where Turlo left.
Yep.
And then
she
you
had Caves of Androzani, which is where Davison left.
Right, and Big Finish has put in a whole thing in there, including new companions that come in.
Aramem's whole era was in there, I believe. So.
Yep. So that's Big Finish does that. They will take this era and go, we can put stuff in here.
Yeah. I mean, it's specifically interesting that they're specifically saying it's directly after Modern Undead, because that means they can kind of give their own wiggle room rather than, kind of trying to squeeze into a spot and making it, seeing how big it is. They can actually make that spot with this kind of bridge in a way.
The Doctor Who original novels, like the New Adventures or or what was their one for the Classic Adventures?
I think they were early Doctor Adventures.
I forget what it was called. Either way, if you looked at the back of the book, it would say this adventure takes place between this, and before the novel this, or after the novel this,
Right.
And Big Finish does kind of the same thing. Right. It's just a matter for if you want to create a definitive list of A to B to C to D, this is where it falls.
Right. Available for listen now is the trailer to the next box set of The War Doctor. Infernal Devices features a return of John Hurt and Jacqueline Pierce, as well as a new Time Lord played by David Warner, not playing the Doctor Unbound, who appears to be experimenting with a Dalek of his own. It would seem by the episode descriptions that this trailer focuses primarily on John Dorney's script, Legion of the Lost, but it could just as easily be the link that connects the 3 stories of Infernal Devices.
That'll be pretty awesome. I love David Warner because he has one of the most distinctive voices in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody here is a fan of Batman, the animated series, David Warner was the voice of Ra's al Ghul. He was also Chancellor Gorkin from Star Trek VI. I believe he played a different character in Star Trek V.
Yep.
He is pretty much...
Apparently he loves doing Big Finish. He pulled Nick Briggs aside. Briggs thought he was going to be chewing him out, but he was actually asking, how can he do more of these?
That's awesome. Well, David Warner's old enough that he doesn't like to, physically act anymore. Because he was old even, in the 90s. And it's, 20 years after. How old is David Warner now?
Old enough to know better?
Old. I mean, he's on my list of people to watch for dying.
I googled David Warner age, and I get some other guy who's 29 years old. Clearly not the same person.
He is 74, and he looks like Ebenezer Scrooge now. If you Wikipedia David Warner actor, you look at him, he looks like a Victorian Scrooge. He really does.
I'd still like to see him show up as a Time Lord in an actual Doctor Who episode. Although now it would be kind of wibbly wobbly if he's going to be a Time Lord in Big Finish, because then they'd be like, well, is it the same Time Lord?
I don't know. Okay, you all remember Fail Salon, right, from the finale this year?
Yeah.
He would have made a kick-ass new Raphael.
Speaking of which, has anybody else here listened to the trailer?
No, I have not, because I just heard about it now.
I was listening to that trailer, and I was sitting there like, is that Rassilon? I'm like, no, they would have told us if it was Rassilon, but I swear he sounds like he's Rassilon in that trailer.
That's what I was saying, though. He would have made a great Rassilon.
Oh, he
I
could
could
have.
see-
He could
I
have made
could-
Rassilon without trying.
He could have made a badass Rassilon that I could believe was a spiritual successor to Timothy Dalton's.
I mean, and there is that possibility that he could be the link from the Rassilon from the Eighth Doctor stories in the main range, the link between that and before Timothy Dalton, but probably not because that's squeezing too many Rassilons in a small place. But he could be.
Well, I don't know. I mean, considering how nasty the Time War was.
Yeah. That's just like the other day I was kind of theorizing that maybe the reason Romana stepped down and gave the presidency to Rassilon is because she regenerated into a Romana 4 that nobody talks about yet.
Either that or they didn't give her a lot of choice. It's like we're on a war footing. We need a general that could face in war. Let's bring back Rassilon. Which, of course, completely forgetting that Rassilon was a little more than just the greatest Time Lord ever. He was also a complete and total asshole.
Genocidal one, if alternate histories are to be believed. But moving on. I thought we had covered this announcement at first, but in truth, we only covered the title of the story. So here's the official announcement. Coming next month, John Barrowman returns in Torchwood, the Victorian Age. We recently covered the fact that Torchwood Series 2 would begin with a story named The Victorian Age featuring Jack Harkness. Despite the fact that February brings us the finale of Series 1, Eve Miles, More Than This, next month brings us the first story of Series 2, The Victorian Age, written by novelist A.K. Benedict and starring Rowan Cooper, Yusuf Kirkor, Louise Jameson, and Erin Neal alongside Barrowman. No, she's probably not playing Leela.
That's what I was wondering. It's like, what the hell's Louise Jameson doing in there?
But she's part of Big Finish's regular stable at this point, so I'm pretty sure she's playing a unique character. Although that would be quite an interesting twist.
Well, technically speaking, Leela was around briefly in the Victorian era because the Fourth Doctor brought her there.
True.
The talents of Wang Chiang. Is Fang Rock around the Victorian era also, or am I getting my eras mixed up? I can't remember, actually.
Don't think they really stated that clearly on that one.
I don't know if it's, I think it's before current era, but I can't remember if it's Victoria or Edwardian era, or when is it taking place.
It might have been closer to Edwardian, maybe.
Early years of the 20th century, so that's probably Edwardian.
Mm-hmm.
It's either Edwardian or very late Victorian. But Towns of Wang Chiang is more 1850s to 1870s. So more classic Victorian.
Right. London, England, the 1890s. Queen Victoria, ruler of Great Britain and Ireland and Empress of India, has arrived for her annual inspection of the Torchwood Institute. This year, everything is quite determined. Nothing will go wrong. Several minutes later, a terrible creature is unleashed on the streets of London. No one knows where it comes from, what it is, or even why it's on Earth. It's ruthless, has no morals, and is quite unstoppable. I hope maybe it is Leela. Captain Jack Harkness is on the loose, and Queen Victoria is along for the ride of her life. How this relates to such things as Harkness's introduction to Torchwood, where he's taken prisoner and tortured by them, is another question. But then again, he's lived through this period 2 or 3 times by now. This series also continues in April 2016 as Naomi Mori's Toshiko Sato faces off with the Russian version of Torchwood, the KVI.
Well, let's see. If Queen Victoria is inspecting Torchwood, that means it has to take place after the episode where Torchwood is founded.
Yeah, so it's at least a year after Tooth and Claw.
Yep. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of that episode for whatever reason, which is by the way, that's 1879. So somewhere that probably takes place in the 1880s. I was trying to nail down when Talons of Wang Chiang was supposed to happen. I'm not actually getting much luck with that because it basically says the Victorian era.
The Victorian era.
Without giving any specific, even decade.
Right. I'm sure if I was a
1889.
regular listener to Jago and Lightfoot, I would know, but
1889.
ah,
And this says 1890, so it's a couple of years later.
I'm surprised. Knowing Big Finish, I'm surprised they're not taking the opportunity to make this a crossover with Jago and Lightfoot.
Well, technically, I think it would be a little bit dark for Jago and Lightfoot.
No.
I haven't really followed that range, to be honest.
It wouldn't surprise me if they make a unlisted cameo.
Right.
That they're just not listing them yet because they want to keep it a surprise.
And actually, come to think of it being dark, the last Jago and Lightfoot story we listened to was one that featured them renting out a theater to somebody who was bringing people in, sucking out their soul, sucking out their emotions, and then leaving their corpses in places easy for the doctor to find them.
And talented Wang Chiang ain't exactly what I would consider to be light comedy either. I mean, the characters themselves are light comic relief, but it's contrasted by very dark, murderous episodes. It's just, trying to make it from being Bleak House, So that really does it for our actual Doctor Who news. We have a couple of pieces of general sci-fi news, one of which is Doctor Who related. In October, it was announced that due to poor box office results, the next movie in the Terminator trilogy that was planned had been put on hold indefinitely. It was still on Paramount's release schedule for May 19th, 2017. This is not a surprise, but it has now been removed from Paramount's film schedule. Now, Terminator Genisys, featuring Matt Smith from Doctor Who, Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, Jason Clarke from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and Jai Courtney from A Good Day to Die Hard, had just made over half its $155 million budget domestically amidst mixed reviews. The film made up for it internationally, largely from China, where it wound up tripling its initial budget. It has been largely treated as a failure and was stated in October last year to be on hold. The third film was scheduled to be June 19th, 2018. So we don't know if Paramount still intends to use that spot to release film 2. However, according to Den of Geek, the rights to the Terminator franchise revert back to James Cameron in 2018, regardless of any additional main films made or their success. James Cameron has been completely apathetic about the Terminator franchise, has no desire to make any further films in Terminator on his own, and largely just tends to sell it out to anybody else who seems to have interest. This is one of the reasons the Terminator franchise has gotten so horribly muddled. Seriously, the franchise...
I'm sure our first announcement in 2018 will be that it is now part of the MCU.
Where Skynet is taken over by... Skynet becomes the next Ultron?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That actually might actually make it better. Either that or it'll be bought by Fox and added to the X-Men universe where the Terminators get turned into the Sentinels.
Or better yet, we'd have Terminator versus Predator.
Speaking of which, I was watching Heroes Reborn finale the other day, and every time I watch Heroes Reborn, I'm sitting there like, where are the Sentinels? I'm waiting for Sentinels to just pop out and start capturing people.
I always had that issue with Heroes in itself, as it felt very Marvel.
Very X-Men, period.
Yeah.
Like, the entire premise is X-Men, but without the Marvel universe.
It was X-Men, in a more realistic universe. But it did kind of take a Marvel turn with everybody learning to hate them and what do they call them?
Evos.
Evo registration, etc. Everything took a very a Marvel turn there in the Heroes Reborn. So I'm not surprised by this. I personally found Terminator Genisys to be enjoyable. It was my 4th favorite film of 2016.
2015.
2016.
Or,
Hmm.
yeah, 2015,
Or-
excuse me. My brain suddenly told me, yeah, it's 2017. I lost a year.
Let's
somewhere.
do the time warp
Ah.
again.
I was gonna say if you already have your list of
Yes.
favorite films for 2016, you can share them. But
Yeah.
Well, might be
Spoilers!
spoilers there.
But no, it is my 4th favorite film for 2015. Of course, Fury Road was my favorite. Star Wars, I think, came in at number 3. Ant-Man at number 2. But I found it to be better than the second Avengers movie. So I found that to be enjoyable. I had smiles on my face watching the Terminator Genisys. I think a few people took it way too seriously, and that was one of the reasons it bogged.
I think also a lot of people are really thick and didn't quite get what the movie was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
What was the movie trying to do?
It was trying to sort things out by actually going back from the beginning and telling us how the new timeline works.
Yes.
Mm.
While at the same time making a little bit of fun of itself in the process.
So it was like the 0 hour to the previous film's Crisis on Infinite Earths?
More like trying to do what Star Trek did with the new Star Trek movies,
Oh.
where they say where they're basically the creators are going, yeah, our continuity is completely fucked up, so we're starting at point A and spinning ourselves into a new timeline. But unfortunately, apparently that shit didn't float with the people that are completely bogged down by continuity that has rewritten itself already so many times it doesn't make sense anymore. So our last bit of news is something that we had hoped would happen is actually happening. Apparently, CW Flash's Grant Gustin apparently runs so fast he's going to break the network barrier. On March 28th, he'll appear in an episode of CBS's Supergirl with the titular character played by Melissa Benoist. The episode, World's Finest, of course it's always called World's Finest, I don't know why, will probably mark one of the few, if not the first time, a character from another network's active franchises makes a guest appearance on a rival network. Though calling CW and CBS rivals is questionable, since CBS owns a large share of CW,
Yeah.
and it's like comparing a whale with a tadpole.
in the end, were Buffy and Angel considered to be on rival networks because they weren't on the same network in the end, right?
Yes, they were, but when they were crossing over with each other, they were on the same network. By the time,
okay.
Buffy and Angel, I mean, they only crossed over once or twice.
Oh well, what they would do is a few times, like Willow would show up in the Angel season finale, things like that.
I think,
or actually, yeah, there's a little bit. Actually, I'm thinking 3 times probably that someone from Buffy showed, or 4 times someone from Buffy showed up in Angel, but that's, yeah.
It was, and that one's kind of a weird issue because Buffy started out on one network and got moved.
Mm-hmm.
And then Angel kept on the original network. So at the same time, they were already established as being part of the same universe. That was a direct spin-off that the main show moved to another thing. So that has kind of a weird clause in it. But here we've got Supergirl on CBS, started on CBS, created by the same people, but not necessarily considered a spin-off. And we're now actually saying, yes, it is, and deliberately tying it in. So this does officially add Supergirl to the CW verse and will allow for future crossovers between Supergirl and not only Flash, but Arrow and DC's Legends of Tomorrow, as well as any other future series made in the universe. Also, certain other characters can cross over, like villains or the Huntress, etc. I believe Supergirl has a bigger budget than Flash and Arrow, being made on a larger network.
Mm-hmm.
and thus can actually account for larger effect-heavy villains or other heroes like Huntress, which the only reason she's not getting her own series is because of budget.
Although I do imagine that being on another network, they're not going to do a 4-show crossover
They might.
because it would be
Oh my god,
maybe.
they should.
But I'm
Come
just
on.
thinking like it makes sense when they're like watch Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to get the whole story. It makes a little bit. I don't know what day of the week Supergirl is on, but
Monday.
it seems
Monday.
So that does actually work in the lineup. And actually,
start on Supergirl, move to the Flash, move to Arrow, and conclude on Legends of Tomorrow.
And actually, that might also work because Supergirl comes first. It's not like Supergirl would be in the middle of the others.
Mm-hmm.
So they might do that.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if I've gotten the latest episode of Supergirl. Our cable box went a little nuts on Monday.
I presume that everybody with the CW is able to watch CBS, although not necessarily in reverse.
Correct. That's the main issue, is the fact that some areas do not have a CW affiliate. And you yourself said you can only watch CW if you have cable.
No, I think that was CBS.
I wouldn't think so.
Because the shows on CW, I've been watching them on CWTV.com the whole time. But whichever... Oh, actually, it was when... I think it might have been... I'm not sure if we were talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or if we were talking about Supergirl. Whichever channel we were checking did want me to log in with information from my cable provider.
Which
now I do have Comcast cable, so I can watch all of these shows. Although for whatever reason, I cannot find more than 2 or 3 episodes of Supergirl on CBS's website. So I guess they just want me to have the DVD.
That's kind of an issue I have with CBS, because we have Hulu Plus here, and they only
Hulu Plus.
But we do not actually can find Supergirl on it. Netflix, of course, doesn't touch anything until the DVD is out, and their website only has a few episodes, as does their on-demand, and that's really annoying if you're trying to start watching a show mid-season, especially a drama show like anything in the Arrowverse, where all the episodes will somehow tie into each other except for the odd filler episode. You really need to be able to go back and watch it all. And
or at the very least, like Hulu will do for something like Arrow and let you watch the 7 most recent episodes. So you may be in the dark to start with, but you're at least getting the current story.
I hate to say this, but I actually did have to torrent some episodes of Supernatural so that we could be caught up with the current season.
Man, why didn't you tell me? Oh, wait, never mind.
You knew this.
So sometime in the summer when every show is on break and I have no classes, I might just sit down and marathon 200 episodes in a row.
Yeah.
I did.
I think it's on Netflix. So.
It's on Netflix or Hulu, so.
Yeah, Netflix, it goes up to season 10.
All right, but yeah,
that took us just about to where we normally end the news.
Yes, it did.
Yay!
Yar.
Hooray!
I had plenty of time to get ice cream.
So,
bring me some.
I'm surprised considering the news did not look that big when we looked at it, but we had large articles.
I was going to say, I'm like, did you see all of Tim's news?
The books and the Big Finish articles themselves were large and in charge.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I wrote a book about books for Tim.
Yes.
No, not that bad.
I had a book.
I'm looking. The books and the stuff. Actually, the books update took 2 pages. So, okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our 5-minute challenge.
Who shall it be today?
Who wants to do it today?
Test your might.
Anybody?
I did last week, right?
Yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
I'll do it.
Yay, Tim! I believe in you.
I'm glad someone does. Okay.
All right, ready.
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1, go.
So there's a bunch of assholes hanging out in a castle when all of a sudden something falls from the sky and they say, hey, let's go check it out. No, it's too dark. Let's wait until dawn. It's like, no, let's check it out. It's like, yeah, we'll wait until dark. We'll wait until dawn. And then this guy in a dome hat comes out and says, hi, I'm a Sontaran. I need you to help me build my spaceship. And the guy says, oh, I'm going to try to kill you with my sword. And, no, you're not. Boom. Boom. And it's like, this planet is primitive. I need more help. So I'll steal. So then we flash forward to the modern times where the third Doctor is hanging out, and the Brigadier is saying, you know, Doctor, a lot of important scientists are disappearing. And the Doctor says, oh, gee, that's intriguing. And then he meets this other scientist who says, hey, yo. Hello, I'm weird and eccentric. And then it says, hey, have you seen this person, Dr. Smith? Oh, I'm Dr. Smith too. And it turns out the other Dr. Smith is Sarah Jane Smith, who snuck onto this secret scientists meeting because she smells the scoop of the century. And so the Doctor puts together a device to figure out what's happening to all the scientists that are disappearing, and he figures out that it's a phantom projector thingy that the Sontaran is traveling through time in the 20th century to steal people, scientists, and equipment to help him repair his spaceship. But the asshole who is in charge of the castle where the Sontaran is keeping his spaceship, wants to attack another guy who is Sir Edward. And the Doctor comes up, goes into the TARDIS, goes back in time to the Middle Ages, and then Sarah Jane stows away, and at first Sarah Jane thinks it's all a movie set, but she learns that she's actually gone back in time, and she tries to start the feminist movement about 500 years too early. And then the Doctor is like saying to the Sontaran, hey, you're bad, you're giving these people handguns when they're not ready for such technology. You know, you're disrupting the natural order of things, dude. Stop it. And so Sarah and the Doctor help Sir Edward fight off an invasion from the asshole, and then there's a robot that's pretty cool, and the Sontaran is shot in the back of the head with an arrow, and his ship takes off, and apparently his ship taking off causes the asshole's castle to explode, and Sir Edward is like, well, another day in the life of the Middle Ages. And the Doctor and Sarah Jane return to their time. Oh, and by the way, all the other scientists are returned to their time too. The end.
I almost wish I had... Oh, actually, sorry. Let me give the time before I make comments on the summary.
Tim's time was 4 minutes and 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Woohoo!
I almost wish I had volunteered for that, just so that I could have worked in the line, I'm from East London, and the future somewhere in there. Also, you mentioned she smells the scoop of the century. Now, I have a cat, and you don't smell scoops. It's a bad idea. Don't do it.
I still say it depends on the scoop because I hear the word scoop and I start thinking Raisin Bran.
Oh God.
Oops.
Now every time I clean the cats, I'm going to think of Raisin Bran.
Well,
Funny story about Raisin Bran.
That the two couples start to look an awful lot alike. Look at you two scoops of fruit.
Funny story about Raisin Bran. I found this out 10 years later. Apparently, whenever my sister as a child was pissed at my father, she would pick all the raisins out of the Raisin Bran, and he just thought that I forget whatever brand he bought, Post or Kellogg's or something. He always bought the name brand. He just thought that they were getting really cheap with the raisins.
Okay. So
You're
scoops and
big
raisins and
Here, greasy here.
aside, are we ready to start our good and bad?
I think we are.
I'm going to take silence as assent
Mm-hmm.
and start with our what we liked overall. And Matt, you're starting.
So I liked overall. Actually, one of the things I quite liked when they at least did for the most part was a lot of nice location shooting. For the Third Doctor seemed to do a lot of it, but in particular, this one was some really good location shooting. They found some nice castles. They actually used them for everything except for maybe a few interiors.
Actually, I hate to tell you this, Matt. 90% of the interiors were done in studio.
Like I said, except for the interiors. But there was a huge amount of time spent outdoors as well, and they were very nicely done. And there's some very big set pieces that were set in those exteriors as well, so they used what they did, and they put a lot of effort behind that one.
Well, if it's anybody that knows how to do medieval England, it's England.
Yeah.
Particularly the BBC, which is the television arm of England.
Except for kind of sort of the later episodes of Doctor Who. Classic Who, I should say.
Then again, they're also doing it cheaply then, too.
To be fair, in later Classic Who, they were still using real castles, except I think they had to lie about which castle it was.
In Silver Nemesis, they did because the castle they wanted to use, Windsor, was occupied and not unavailable, so they still would then use a neighboring castle that was close enough. Same style and etc.
As compared to when people want to shoot American cities, they have to go shoot in Canadian cities.
Yes.
Or in Spain.
Really?
Yes.
Or are you talking about westerns, or are you
Yes,
talking...
if you want to shoot a western, you got to shoot it in Spain or Italy. You can't even shoot, in an old western ghost town anymore, even though there's a few hundred in existence.
Some cities you can also, I think, in Italy too, but not in like huge chunks.
Well, when I said Italy, I was thinking of the old spaghetti westerns.
Right.
Well, that too, yeah.
All right, Tim, what did you like?
It took me a while to figure out what spaghetti westerns meant until eventually I started looking up more westerns.
God damn it.
Any westerns made by De Laurentiis. Okay, Tim, what did you like overall?
Overall, I really liked the supporting cast, particularly Professor Rudish.
Really?
Yeah, I found him charming and likable.
Rudish was the one character that the writer and creator had a lot of regrets about because he doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, he doesn't.
Well, I think that his appearances were limited enough that he didn't get old for me.
It wasn't getting old. It was the fact that, here you've got this blind scientist who's completely worthless to the main antagonist, yet he's allowed to roam freely in the lab. And nobody does anything at all to him.
Well, now that you put it that way, I still think he's good.
All right, Bill. How about you?
I'm going to go with the... not entirely sure how to describe this because it's basically a subtext argument here, but it's basically the way the doctor responds to Sarah Jane, basically treating her as a human that's a not scientist and therefore useless to any of his purposes. And whereas she comes at it from the feminist tact of, oh, you can't treat me like this because I'm a woman, and neither one of them actually stated outright because it would resolve the whole thing. But it's just kind of amusing seeing, what comes of those interactions. It was a very long and convoluted explanation, but I couldn't figure out a better way to say it.
All right. I really can't respond to that either. Aaron, how about you?
I actually like the film quality. I like the fact that it wasn't cleaned up, at least not on the DVD. And, well, if it wasn't like scrubbed squeaky clean anyway. But I like the fact that it was not really crystal clear. It added to the grittiness. Made it kind of feel kind of like dirty medieval England. I don't know, just add to the atmosphere.
Okay. Well, I really liked the how the introduction of Sarah Jane in this, and the fact that I think that was probably the closest we've ever had to a real response to how that would, how they would take the sudden time travel and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Out of, where we've seen previous companions before, where they're just looking around in wonder, and she goes the route of trying to rationalize it, which I think is kind of how you would do it initially. It just seemed very believable to me. No response to that?
I'm trying to think of other companions who have been in that situation. And of course, fresh on my memory, but really not related to Doctor Who, is an Iris Wildtime episode that I recently listened to, where the people were convinced that it was some sort of candid camera type thing until they actually encountered dinosaurs coming out of the time machine. But I'm trying to think of one that actually occurred in Doctor Who to compare it to. The vast majority of companions that immediately come to mind either went to alien planets or knew that they were getting out of the TARDIS in the first place. But I'm sure there's Ian and Barbara, who I'm not even sure what the hell they did, because that was kind of a boring episode
they just
2.
kind of ran out into the middle of the desert all of a sudden and just looked around all confused.
Okay.
After also already staring around the interior of this TARDIS for a while. Yeah, she's kind of the only one that's ever
Interestingly,
really
she
like
never seems to react to the bigger on the inside thing.
Yeah.
I noticed they sort of skipped over that, or they didn't show her trying to rationalize that.
Right. That's why when I first watched it, I actually thought that Lynx had accidentally taken her to the past, thinking she was a scientist or something, until I realized that no, she came in the TARDIS.
All right. So, all right, we've gotten to me. So, what about things you dislike?
Oh, like an uppercut. Trying to think of any real major nitpicks.
It's not major if it's a nitpick. It's not a nitpick if it's major.
Which is in and of itself the problem. It's just I have to kind of go for low blows here, essentially, because I can't really think of anything huge that really ruined this episode for me. I guess I would have to go with the scientist. Why was he abducted? Why was he never mind changed? Why was he let loose to just wander around and do nothing?
They weren't able to hypnotize him because he couldn't see the device they were using to hypnotize people.
Because his glasses were left in the previous.
That's highly illogical because then you'd think the Sontaran would just kill him because obviously he should be watching the mind control work if he's actually any kind of a decent archfiend mastermind type. And he should have noticed something was extremely wrong from the get-go.
Yes, I actually agree with you there. I'm not sure why Lynx would just let him wander around. It is a matter of bother, and that is something that both the writer and the producer, or the script editor, both are kind of like, yeah, I'm not quite sure where we were going with this.
It just raises too many questions.
There's logic in what he says.
All right, Tim, how about you? What did you like the least overall?
The least, there were too many times that someone suspected someone of something they weren't doing. It's like too many misunderstandings. Like Professor Rubish says, I'll bet Sarah Jane is behind all this. And then Sarah thinks, I'll bet the doctor is behind all this.
Well, in Rubish's defense of suspecting Sarah Jane Smith, she had snuck into the scientific enclosure using her aunt's name. Her aunt was the virologist. She's a journalist. So when you find out that the person that's who's claiming to be next to you is actually in America on a tour, you do tend to get suspicious of them. Sarah Jane's immediate suspicion of the doctor as being behind everything, that does bother me a little.
Yeah, that came kind of out of left field, especially since she actually stole away when his ship and
speaking of what actually seemed more out of left field was the scene where Rudish was like, "She told me you were a spy," and then she just walks in and they completely forgot that ever happened.
Well, they didn't, because that was continued on with her suspecting the doctor in the past. The fact that was supposed to prove to her that he is a spy, that he's using his time machine to steal people, and her basis for that is the fact that he has a time machine. It's still a little assumptuous, but then again, she is a journalist, not a law enforcement investigator or anything going, I only have partial evidence here. She's a young journalist, so she's being a little young media with it. She learns, she gets better. All right, Bill, how about you?
I just realized while we were talking that what I had listed as a general complaint is actually something that's only present in one scene to make it more of a least favorite scene than an actual general complaint. So I was trying to... I just spent the past minute trying to think of something else. I haven't quite yet.
Do we want to you want to come back to this?
Sure.
Okay, Aaron, you're up.
I didn't hate them, but I disliked how the henchmen reacted and just kind of behaved. The behavior of the henchmen were a little bit too stupid, too cowardly, especially. They didn't want to do this, and they didn't want to do that, and they were superstitious. We can't, we don't want to go outside. We don't want to investigate. There's demons out there, and I get it. It's the medieval ages and stuff, but it was still frustrating.
Well, Aaron, this is because it is the Middle Ages, and it's before the Henchmen's Union and the Guild of Calamitous Intent, and so henchmen have no real.
Henchmen have no rights.
But at the same time, I understand where Aaron's coming from, because I've seen far more intelligent medieval henchmen who weren't afraid of nothing because they are also already essentially swords for hire.
Yeah, the bit is it's too dark and there's monsters out there did bother me, because it's not like this is before the invention of the torch.
No kidding.
Before the invention of the modern torch, flashlight, yes, but a actual freaking burning torch that you carry with you on while riding your horse, no, that fucking exists. You can deal with it.
And Iron Grund should at least have the knowledge to he should at least have the know-how how to light a torch, how to create a torch. If not him, maybe his lieutenants or someone.
Yeah,
His
now
cooks should know how to start a flame for crying out loud.
Now, if they had stated that there was some kind of weird, spooky legend about the woods, and that was
would be
making
one
them
thing.
afraid, but they didn't. They just said it's frightening out there. There's demons. Not really,
That actually would have been pretty cool if there was some kind of legend attached to Lynx's arrival, like, or that they attached to Lynx's arrival, like, oh, we've always been scared of the Force because of this one monster that keeps showing up and eating our people, and it's probably just like maybe the Doctor finds out that it's just a regular bear, or maybe a strange bear, or strangely marked bear, or something like that, or maybe a cat.
Yeah, that was an issue. Do you have anything yet, Bill?
Not yet, although I'm a little distracted because Tim just brought something to my attention on Facebook that I hadn't realized, and I don't know if Matt wants us to say anything about it or not. Or if we should wait a week.
Wait, what is this on Facebook? I'm checking out Facebook now, by the way.
Tim's post on Matt's wall just now.
Hang on, I have to get to it. I'm also watching the live stream.
So I wouldn't be able to see it anyway right now.
Okay, so what I didn't like overall was the special effects were a little bit meh. This was mostly the fault of the director, who was kind of a do it cheaply type.
I remember one of the shots where I think it was like the second time he shoots the Sontaran shoots the Doctor. That one actually came off really well, but all the other times before and after that, and especially that ending explosion.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But even the spaceship landing was
Look, it's a circle through a window.
I actually thought that was pretty. Or, yeah, the one way in the beginning of the episode. You mean, right? I actually thought that was pretty cool.
It was, dude. They basically shined a LED light on a black backdrop and just basically manually shook it down. It was not that great.
I liked it better than the opening of Time in the Ronnie.
I've made better effects than that in freaking After Effects with no knowledge of what the hell I'm doing.
But they didn't have After Effects in the early 70s.
Yeah,
well, they had blue screen and they could have done better.
Actually, yes, they did have blue screen because this was a couple years after they did blue screen. But there was better ways that they could even do that kind of stuff. But it was really done cheaply, and I will talk about that later. So, Bill, do you have anything yet?
Not.
You are highly distracted tonight.
I think there is distractions, but I was dead set on that one thing. Then I realized it was just a scene and not an actual general thing. And then what would have been my backup is kind of what Tim mentioned. So I didn't really have a third. So
do you want to take a pass then?
Yeah, I'll take a pass, and if I come up with something, I'll mention it.
Okay, so I believe that takes us up to scenes that we like.
Oh.
All right, so Matt, you're up.
You know what? I know exactly which scene I like the most. It's the scene where Sarah is officially in 100% on this, which is when she saves the Doctor by freeing the chandelier.
A scene I'm pretty sure they added just because Pertwee wanted to do it.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was added just because Pertwee's like, I want to do an Errol Flynn number. Whee!
Yes. Yes, I'm pretty sure it was just one of those. It was on Pertwee's wish list. And it's like swinging across the room on a chandelier, check.
Bingo! I believe I have a full hand on this one. Yep, got it.
All right. So, Tim, how about you? You got a favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene was the scene where my favorite man, Professor Rubish, helps the Doctor out of the torture device that
After
Links-
accidentally turning it to high.
yeah, that Links put him on the like. After says like, oh, you mean this way? Nope, not that way. Oh, Rubish,
Right, how you
will
lefty
your
Lucy?
will your wacky shenanigans ever fail to amuse me?
I don't know. I can't pull my hand away from my face right now.
Okay. How about you, Bill?
I would say the scene with the Doctor pretending to be a robot. I just kind of amused by it. And for one thing, it's that scene in the serial where you're like, okay, which scene is the one added specifically so they could have an action scene with John Pertwee? That's this one. And otherwise, just the dialogue of it and everything. It was a fun scene. I was trying to find a picture of it for the title card, but I could not.
All right. How about you, Aaron?
My favorite scene, I like the assault on the castle scene. Pretty much where the Doctor comes up with the whole idea of creating dummies and just basically making sulfur bombs. Very kind of simple, but also has its own share of action and comedy mixed in with it. So it's just kind of a little bit of everything.
I couldn't help making Python commentary during that scene where the smoke bombs are coming down. You see the people, and you see them start turning around. And I'm just like, run away!
Run away! Run away!
Yeah, because it was pretty much Python antics at that point. All right, so my favorite scene, I think, is an actually earlier version of Tim's, where you see him trying to break free of the device, and it's shocking him because it's one of those scenes where Pertwee has the most expressive face that he can do with that kind of stuff. And it's one thing I loved about his first appearance, where he's getting strangled by the squid monster. And it would look completely stupid, except for his face is selling it.
Mm-hmm. He's always selling it with this panicked look.
And he's selling it here, too, and it's beautiful. So, scenes we don't like.
Oh. Which one to go with? There's a couple of them. There's at least a handful of them. I think the first one that just kind of struck me as, what's that supposed to be, was the light through the window.
The landing spaceship?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked about that a bit. It literally looks like they had a bulb or something against a black backdrop and was manually bringing it down on like a hook. Because it shook.
But didn't they show it like crash into like a globe from a space view?
No.
Nope. Not unless you saw the enhanced special edition, Bill.
Oh, maybe.
Which might be why Bill got a better look
maybe.
at it.
Yes,
Yeah.
the DVD release, which Aaron and I have, has the ability to turn on enhanced CGI effects.
Oh, okay.
Which fixed a lot of the issues I have with it.
So yeah, the enhanced version will obviously be better, but the original effect was awful.
Got you. That would explain the disconnect there. Okay.
Yeah, the original effects were just the most pathetic thing ever. They could have done so much more very easily.
Mm-hmm. So, Tim, your least favorite scene?
I think my least favorite scene is the scene at the end where Blanks takes off his helmet for the first time, and we see a Centauran for the first time, because it was like there was no build up to that, or like no reason for him. It just like, oh, by the way, we need to show the monster's face. Oh, let's just throw it in here at the end.
It was the cliffhanger for the first episode. That was what it was. It was literally he took off his helmet, faced it, and there was the whirling sound, and they went to the end credits for the first episode.
The Doctor has officially seen his main enemy. Yeah.
Although I couldn't help notice the fact that when he turned around, he had his tongue sticking out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm watching this turning around, and I can just imagine the actor going, "Ow! My tongue got stuck in the mask." Because pretty much that's what it looked like. His tongue got stuck or something.
Yeah. The mask looks very kind of similar to the goons that the Daleks were using.
Not really, because those looked more ape-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, much like the 11th Doctor would say, looked more like a potato.
Yeah, this literally looked like Mr. Potato Head.
Frog face, as Iron would put it, I believe.
Yeah, frog face is how Iron Gron says it. Once he sees the mask, and that was, by the way, a scene that was great, is when he bursts in there and the Centauran turns around and Iron Gron's just sitting there going, staring at Lynx's face, and it's just like, I told you my face would not be pleasant to you. And truer words were never spoken.
And then from there on, his angry nickname for him was Frogface.
Which I find interesting because it also might mean that he thinks Lynx is French.
Well, he did say he was a Norman.
Eh?
He said he looked vaguely Norman, so yes, that might be French. So, Bill, your least favorite scene?
So this is what I was originally thinking as a general thing for the episode until I realized it's only in her introduction scene. But Sarah Jane, who's this undercover reporter, sneaking around in a high security environment, immediately meeting this person who she apparently mistrusts and tells him her life story.
That is a little odd.
Right in front of another person who is apparently so eccentric that he does not hear her.
Where is this? I mean, this is obviously back
Sarah Jane's literal first scene. The first time she appears on screen and meets the Doctor.
She doesn't tell him her life story right away, doesn't she? Because she's still trying to mask as her.
As soon as the professor turns her back and the Doctor mentions that she must have written the paper when she was 5 years old.
Yes.
She's like, oh, it was my aunt's paper. I'm a journalist. Don't tell anybody, yada, yada. The professor is about 5 feet away, but he's too busy drawing on the side of the TARDIS to hear her.
Distracted scientist. But I think was another thing of that was kind of supposed to be whispered, but because of, stage style, they couldn't do it that way.
Style acting, yeah.
That probably would have helped the scene, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's that whole stage-esque style, and I don't know if it would have been done that way in the United States or not, considering ours evolved from radio drama.
What they would have done instead of this, they would have gotten really up close like this and talked like that instead. At least that's how radio would have done it.
All right, Aaron, what about your least favorite scene?
My least favorite scene is, I think, when they're coming back from the sulfur bomb attack. I don't really have, like, a super unpleasant scene that I can think of. There's some boring scenes with, like, the other king, the opposite king. Or, the good guy king, I should say. But yeah, when they're coming back from the sulfur attack, and he's like, Iron Gron is calling them all cowards and everything. However, is succeeded by another scene I really like where Lynx pretty much turns around and is like, well, you were kind of leading them in the retreat, sir.
I actually liked that scene because, yes, it kind of shows that Iron Gron is not really a noble
He's
guy.
a lot of talk.
He's a dick.
Yeah.
He's about as thick as his own henchman.
Yeah. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He just happened to be the strongest guy of
Well,
this
remember
group.
that's also established early on when he's no more literate than his people are, and he needs the guy he stole the message from to read it to him.
By the way, as a side note, before we go on to my least favorite scene, you do realize who played Hal the Archer, don't you?
No.
No.
Jeremy Bulloch.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
He would go on a few years later to play a famous role known as Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes
He was
Back.
the that's right. He was the voice, right?
I think so.
Because I think
He was at least the voice, probably, yeah.
I'm pretty sure they still don't know who was inside the suit, if I'm remembering correctly.
So Blondie here. Go zoom in on Blondie.
I didn't even realize it until I saw the behind the scenes and I saw them doing interviews with him. And I'm like, Jesus, that's Jeremy Bulloch.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was the costume.
He was the guy.
He was the physical presence.
The
of Boba
voice
Fett.
was Jason Wingreen. So apparently the whatever I had read.
So this
where
guy
they
just
didn't
loves
know
to be
was
on screen
outdated.
doing crazy guys who don't know how to shoot a weapon.
Well, this wasn't his first appearance in Doctor Who either.
Oh?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what his other. He was in the Space
Museum.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm showing he appeared twice in Doctor Who according to Wikipedia. So it would have been the Space Museum and the Time Warrior.
Interesting. He has a very strange and varied sci-fi past, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The only thing he missed out on was Star Trek. At least
This
so
is
far.
Brian.
Yeah,
Blessed.
Aaron can attest because we were watching this behind the scenes show, and I literally said, "Holy shit, that's Jeremy Bulloch!" And she's like, "Who? It's Boba Fett." And then it was like 5 minutes later they actually go into who he was and they mention it, and I'm just like, "See? Ah!"
Oh.
He likes his long-range fighters, that's for sure. He plays a very Robin Hood-esque looking guy in this, and then he plays a very charismatic yet very few-lined character known as Boba Fett, who's a bounty hunter.
Although, yeah, I'm like, arguably, like he was like David Prowse in terms of the role, in the fact that he probably had more to do with. Well, okay, David Prowse was probably even in terms of who made the character more popular, but it was Bullock's work in the suit that made Boba Fett popular more than the few lines that Wingreen had.
Yes, that is very true. Very much his physical presence is what made Boba Fett.
Yeah. It's like in that respect, he had quite a few lines. They just weren't dialogue.
They just weren't
lines.
actually written down. It was just what he was doing that made him pop.
Yep. And as somebody who grew up, watching things like Halloween and Friday the 13th, I can definitely respect
Suit actors, yes. A good suit actor will always make things work better than they otherwise would have been.
All right.
Look at Bob.
So my least favorite scene is the explosion of the castle at the end. Because it is such crap. And it, by the way, is solely the fault of the director, Alan Bromley.
You do know for a fact it is him, then. Okay.
Yes, I do. I will explain what happened. A season or two ago, they made a episode called The Daemons.
Okay, I know that one.
In which, at the end of it, a church explodes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they actually exploded a model of a church, but it was a very well-made model. And they actually got a frick ton of write-in complaints about them defiling a house of God.
Oh my!
How dare you blow up a
God.
model?
Well, no one knew it was a model because it was very well made.
It was on television, though. That should be their first clue that it wasn't a real church.
No, they actually thought they blew up an actual church for it.
Then they should not be allowed to watch television.
I'm with Bill on this.
Because
Yeah.
unfortunately, there is no such law. So they kept writing in about this and everything. So they didn't want to make it quite as realistic as that. So that's what they told Alan Bromley, who said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." And what he literally did for that explosion is he went to the BBC archives and looked for an archive of basically masonry exploding or collapsing. And that's what he threw in at the end of it. He's like, "Don't worry, it'll mesh perfectly." And of course it didn't.
No, it didn't even try. And matter of fact, it didn't even look like any stone structure actually falling apart. It looked like literally.
It looked like a
rocks being thrown off
quarry
a cliff.
explosion. It literally looked like a quarry explosion.
It didn't look like that at all. It looked like freaking rocks getting pushed off a cliff. That's what my version looked like. And then we just cut suddenly to the doctor and company landing on the ground while they did some sort of weird color thing.
For me, it looked like and not really an explosion where you would see like a graphical explosion, but like down at the quarry by where I live when they would use small blasting charges. So it would be poof, and you see stuff falling. You see a wall, a quarry wall collapsing.
Mhm.
I didn't even see the wall collapsing. I literally saw some stones falling down like the side of a quarry by the look of it.
I didn't see them fall off the top. I saw them fall off the side, which made me see what looked like a collapsing quarry. But it didn't look like the castle. It didn't look like
It didn't look like any of the geography.
the time of day wasn't right. Yeah, it didn't match anything. It was absolutely horrible. And again, the CGI special effects changed that because you actually see the front of the castle and the explosion come out the front door, which is nice. But
Oh god, I wish I could see the better version now.
pester me when you're over here for OddCon because I have it on DVD.
Because that alone would improve the episode tenfold.
Well, still,
end the story with a bang.
but really, it's Bromley's fault. It was Bromley's fault because he felt like as long as you get the general idea across, that's good enough. And of course, but mind you, his credits where he directs, it was from things like Zed Cars and Coronation Street and Crossroads, stuff that are not high special effects shows.
Well, then he shouldn't really be the choice pick for a Doctor Who episode to begin with.
I mean, there are Doctor Who episodes that would be fine with, and most of them would have been the ones set in the modern day with the unit cast rather than ones set in the past with aliens.
This picture's cute, by the way.
All right. Before we move on to final thoughts, I had another comment I wanted to make. This is an episode with a lot of firsts.
Yes.
It is the first appearance of Sarah Jane Smith.
Yep.
The first appearance of the Sontarans.
The first time a Sontaran can't tell a boy from a girl, or what a girl is.
It took him a few moments, but he caught on faster than some.
And some, yes.
The first time what's known as the time tunnel opening was used in Doctor Who. The one that would later become...
Oh, yes. That's right, because it's the start of the season.
Yep.
And that was that season's opening.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time that the entire Doctor appeared in the opening instead of just his torso.
Mm-hmm.
Or just the face, I mean. Instead of just the face.
Although they would later go back to just a bust shot for Tom Baker, Davidson, etc. So I really think the season's the only time the entire Doctor appears in the...
I believe so, unless it happened in the Moffat era.
It has not.
No.
The Doctor did not appear at all in seasons 5, 6, and first part of 7. His a bus shot was used for the for the vague star cloud for the end of season 7, and you really only see the portions of Moffat's face for the 8 and 9 opening. So unless they change it for
Capaldi's
series 10,
face.
yeah, Capaldi's face.
I know Moffat wants to be the Doctor, but
Unless
someone
they
get to use his face.
unless they change the opening for series 10, it's not going to happen during the Moffat era. Sorry, brain is running on fumes here. But that's a lot of firsts. And of course, it's also the beginning of John Pertwee's final season.
Yeah.
And again, it was one of those things where also the cast, the writer and screenwriter and everything, had also basically decided it was going to be the last thing, and that was also kind of what contributed to Pertwee deciding to leave with them, because he was already disheartened after Delgado died.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that said, let's. Anybody else have anything they want to contribute?
This is also the first time and one of the last couple of times we'll have a decent Santaran on screen.
I would argue otherwise. I believe we get good Santarans through the Invasion of Time.
I disagree about the Invasion of Time. I would actually say that's my least favorite Santaran mask.
I would argue that the Two Doctors was worse than Invasion of Time.
I found myself
agree to disagree on that one.
I recall the masking reused multiple times, and it looked worse each time. That's why I recall Santarans for the most part. But we'll argue that as we go through this, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself trying to second guess the Doctor's when he said that if you give human beings gunpowder in long-range weapons now, by the 1700s they'll split the atom.
Yeah, I'm so about that.
Basically, his concept there was literally, if they had essentially, because these were not early rifles. These were basically, I think, early 19th century rifles that Lynx was making them. So if you gave people in the, 10th, 11th century,
right,
19th century weapons, and you had people like Da Vinci and other people that had access to that technology.
Them.
Yeah.
I think Star Trek did an episode on that concept as well, where the Klingons were giving them weapons.
Yes, but at that point, but there wasn't really a time meddling portion of that.
Well, no, it was a prime directive thing rather than time, but...
Yeah, but Kirk decided to then arm the other side. So he went the other way with it.
True.
He tried that one. That was a balance of power issue.
Because Kirk is a philosopher and a thinker.
Yeah. With his pants.
Yes, pretty much.
Kirk is a philosopher and thinker in bed.
If you don't believe him, ask the Green Women.
Kirk never slept with a green woman until the new movies. The green alien woman was actually Pike.
I am being visited by a very spoiled cat.
So let's go ahead and move on to our final thoughts then, and that's starting with you, Matt, your spoiled cat aside.
Spoiled she is. Very nice episode overall. Anything I could think of was mostly nitpicks. There were moments where it got a bit silly, but it wasn't like completely forcing me out of the episode silly. It was more or less something unexpected, and then it moved it along. Some nice, very nice outdoors action sets that were set up, action sequences rather, and a plot that actually, for the most part, made sense, except for maybe one or two characters that, again, made the story a little bit silly. Definitely a nice little romp.
All right, Tim.
I thought this was a fine episode. I thought the introduction of Sarah Jane was very well done, like for setting up who she is and giving this character potential to grow and evolve. And there wasn't too many problems with the effects for my taste, so this was okay.
All right, Bill.
I think it's a pretty solid episode. Keeps moving along at a fair pace without getting too convoluted or without getting boring. Some hiccups, but I think the comic relief was done okay as long as you don't think too hard about it, which generally tends to be the case with comic relief. And the companion introduction, the companion filling her role is no worse than any following companion, so it's not really something to mark points off. So generally a pretty solid episode.
Aaron.
I really enjoyed this one. I've seen it before, either on PBS or on VHS at some point. I think it has its dark, gritty moments, but it's also lightened by a good sense of comedy, and also a nice connection between Sarah Jane and the Doctor. I think they get on pretty swimmingly right from the start. Well, even though he's accusing her of of being a fake, he knows she's just kind of trying to pass herself off, but it still all works together. Even Lynx and Iron Gron have an interesting work relationship going on that we can see actually evolves over the course of the episode, where they just get to the point where they can't stand each other.
The bromance is over.
The bromance is over, yes. You can't build a romance on swords and guns alone. Anyway, but yeah, I actually really enjoyed this one, and the costumes and the sets and the location all really kind of enhance the atmosphere.
All right. Of course, this episode marks the beginning of the Elisabeth Sladen, Sarah Jane era. It is heralded as probably one of the greatest eras in Doctor Who ever. But yet this season itself has a lot of failures in it. And this is considered to be one of the best episodes of this season. This is the episode that gave us plastic dinosaurs and rubber spiders.
I prefer the opposite.
The acting in this is phenomenal. Elisabeth Sladen is unbelievably good. John Pertwee is, as always, excellent. The actor that played Iron Gron was recommended to the people by another famous actor, Bob Hoskins, who they originally had tapped for the role but was busy, and I think he does a great job.
Yes.
Pretty much the acting is good. Most of the directing as well, though the special effects are questionable.
The special effects directing needed a totally different director.
The scenery shots were good. Even the internal scenes were wonderful. Costuming was great. Really, there's only some minor nitpicks with this episode that bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And that will drag it down slightly.
Slightly.
So, Matt, your rating.
Overall, yes, a very good, a very solid episode. There's the slightest nitpicks. If they could have worked something a little bit better with that one scientist, maybe it could have gone up. But as it stands, 4.5.
4.5 from the Matt. How about from the Tim?
I'm going to agree with the Matt and give it a 4.5. But this was Yes?
I was going to say that Tim agrees with the Matt.
You were saying, Tim?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, this was a very well done episode, well acted, get presented. But I didn't go gaga over it, so I can't give it a 5. But it was the closest to thing, and
very close. Just a few more fixes.
Yeah.
All right. How about the bill?
I thought I was going a little high. I wasn't sure if I was going a little too high or not, but since I'm already lower than Matt or Tim, then I think I'm fairly safe giving this a 4.0.
The bill is a party pooper with a 4.0.
Boo.
How about the Aaron?
Sure to poop.
The Aaron is going to agree with the Matt and the Tim and give it a 4.5. As pretty much, there are some elements that don't quite work, and that's what keeps it from becoming a full-on 5. But most of the stuff all comes together very well. So.
Well, the Ron is going to agree with the Matt, the Aaron, and the Tim. And give this episode a 4.5 because while there are nitpicks, they are minor in my book. The special effects are, yes, subpar, and there's one character out of place, but I can't really argue with anything else in the episode. So it gets a 4.5. Actually, it'd probably be a 4.4 or a 4.3, but that still goes to a 4.5.
Yeah.
So our averages, when combined, is a 4.4 for this episode. Because every party needs a pooper, and apparently that's Bill today.
Every party needs a pooper, that's why we invited you. Party pooper.
Woohoo.
Party pooper.
How does it feel to be the party pooper, Bill?
I'm used to it.
All right. 4.4 from us for the Time Warrior puts that at number 18 on our list of 140 Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane, and Big Finish episodes reviewed. So that's really high up on the list. It shares its place with the 11th Hour, Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, Face the Raven, Husbands of River Song, Destiny of the Doctor, Smoke of Mirrors, Terror of the Zygons. It is above the Three Doctors. It is above Nightmare in Silver, but it is below the Invasion, Spare Parts, and the Zygon Invasion, Saigon Inversion.
Still a very strong position to have.
Yes, it is. It is in good company. And that will do it for our coverage of the Time Warrior.
Okay. If you enjoy listening to us, please go ahead and like the video and subscribe on twitch.tv/unearthlypodcast, on Unearthly Podcast on YouTube, and mixcloud.com/n_unearthly_podcast. You can also like and follow and all those things at facebook.com/unearthlypodcast and twitter.com/unearthlypod. And if you want to support us, you can head on over to patreon.com/unearthlypodcast.
Hey, you didn't mess those up this week.
Next week, we jump forward 1 year, 1 Doctor, and add 1 companion as we go to the next appearance of the Sontarans in 1975's The Sontaran Experiment, with Tom Baker as the Doctor, Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, and Ian Marter as Harry Sullivan.
Harry Sullivan's an imbecile!
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, we've already done that one. Although technically it won't have happened yet.
Everything's all out of order. I can't follow a damn thing here.
It's all
wibbly wobbly.
timey-wimey.
The bathrooms are out of order. The soda machines are out of order.
You're out of order. They're out of order. The whole system is out of order.
You can't.
Oh, that's why he called it the imbecile's gas in Zygons. I was a little curious about that. Okay, I must have forgotten that. I must have forgotten that line.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.